Ugh, so annoying. You and Ella are really a pain. I wish you'd just disappear. Henry hurled unbelievable insults at me and his own daughter. Just when I thought I couldn't trust this man anymore, an incident occurred. Ella? One day, when I returned home from work, Ella was sitting on the ground in the garden. Her hands, clutching her knees, were trembling from the cold. Even with a coat on, her exposed cheeks and the backs of her hands had turned red and black. Seeing my face, Ella smiled weakly, relieved. Mom, welcome back. Why are you in the garden? What happened? Where's Dad? Ella, still smiling, muttered resignedly, Mila and a family trip. Leaving just a sister and calling it a family trip, abandoning Ella, was a cruel act filled with malice. What does he think of Ella's existence? Of Ella's life? Henry probably underestimates me as a weak woman with little income. Indeed, that's true. But a mother becomes strong at times. Such a father is not needed. I am Aurora, a housewife in her 40s. I have 2 daughters, Ella in the 2nd grade of elementary school, Mila, 3 years old. When Mila started kindergarten, I began working part-time. Not having worked since Ella's birth, I was indeed tired, both physically and mentally. But I was happy to have more adult interactions, having had little contact with people before. Mom, I made dinner. Ella did? Wow, thank you. Returning home 30 minutes after Ella's school day, she was proud. To think she'd help out, considering how tired I am from part-time work, was touching. Until recently, I even prepared her morning clothes. I tried to hug her in my happiness, but she dodged me. Come on, I always say I don't like hugs. It's a bit sad, but my daughters are growing up fast. But the presence of my rebellious eldest son has been troubling me lately. Yuck, what's this meal? It's terrible. My eldest son, no, my husband, Henry, exaggeratedly complained. The flavor is too bland. Terrible. Who can eat this? It's trash. Today's meal was indeed a bit bland. I had informed Henry during meal preparation. Today's meal was made by Ella. That was how I phrased it, yet he chose to loudly fuss about it. Hey, Henry, stop it. Ugh, why are you angry? I just spoke the truth. I'm not in the wrong. Ella bit her lip and glared at Henry. Hey, you think it's okay to make that face at your parents? You're really insolent. Not cute. You can't even make a decent meal. You're finished as a woman. Such words shouldn't be said to a grade school daughter. My head heated up, and I took a deep breath. Then Mila appeared between us. Dad, can't eat the meal? Mila will cast a spell, she said, showing the jam. Stretching, she spread jam on Henry's bread. Let it be delicious. Let it be delicious. See, Dad, you shouldn't be picky. Eat a lot and grow big. The tense atmosphere softened instantly. Henry's face relaxed and he patted Mila's head. Mila, thank you. Mila is cute, huh? Yeah, Mila is cute. Big sister is cute too. Mila is cuter. Dad, love. Mila looked up at Henry with an unaffected smile. She was truly a magician. She easily silenced Henry, who had been so maliciously smiling at trying to belittle Ella. Our family isn't close, but it's normal enough. Henry doesn't have much interest in me or our daughters, even when Mila had trouble with friends. So? I can't do anything about it. He was indifferent. However, he drinks beer moderately and doesn't gamble. Of course, he doesn't have a violent side. He just leaves everything about the house and daughters to me. Not a bad person per se, just a man with no sense of fatherhood, I guess. Our relationship started to crumble about half a year ago. Henry came home drunk and overly cheerful one day. Hi, Lord Daddy has returned. He messed with the daughters who were about to sleep. Dad, don't stick to me, you smell. Don't say that. Dad's a good man, right? You love me, right? Stop it. Thinking back, that day marked the beginning of Ella calling Henry smelly and avoiding him, and Henry started finding Ella annoying and not cute. Even on days when Henry hadn't been drinking, Ella would glare at him and call him smelly. I, suffering from chronic rhinitis, wouldn't understand, but girls of her age are sensitive, I suppose. Since Ella doesn't directly insult Henry, I consider it a part of her growing up and watch over her, but the real problem is Henry. "I've got souvenirs!" Returning from work, Henry loudly announced, showing us a box of cakes. Even Ella smiled at this moment, but upon opening the box, there were only 2 cakes. I secretly felt down, thinking there were only enough for the daughters, being a cake lover myself. "Here, Mila, you get the chocolate cake. You like it, right?" "Yeah, I love it." "And this cheesecake is for—" Henry smirked mischievously. "It's mine!" Ella's smile vanished instantly. She turned her back on Henry and, dismissing it as silly, turned on the TV. I couldn't help but let out an irritated, "Huh?" at the blatant harassment. Wait a minute, what about Ella's share? This isn't right. Henry, as if he had anticipated being criticized from the start, sneered in a way that was unsettling. "Hey, I bought it with my money. I don't see why I should be scolded by you. Here, Mila, let's eat together." "Okay, let's eat. Big sister, Mom, let's share." The pure Mila brushed aside Henry's malice. Joyfully, she started preparing plates and forks for 4. "No, it's just for me and Mila." Henry was flustered, but faced with Mila's radiant smile, he bit his lip hard. Still, Ella seemed uncomfortable. So, I ran to the nearby grocery store and came back with lots of sweets. "Let's start our dessert party." Finally, a smile returned to Ella's face. In contrast, Henry clicked his tongue, ostentatiously eating a cheesecake. Ella's favorite, with exaggerated chewing and making a strange display. Henry must have been very displeased, for he complained even the next morning. "You spoil Ella too much. Buying her cake just because she pouts a little will only make her more arrogant. She's cheeky, so you need to discipline her properly." Discipline? Giving Mila cake but not Ella is your idea of discipline? That just makes Ella feel bad, and Mila can't enjoy her cake either. Think about both of their feelings. Henry probably can't keep up with Ella's growth, but what's the point of responding to a rebellious daughter with a rebellious attitude? Henry needs to realize he's a parent. You're a father. Henry slammed his hand on the table. "Yeah, I am a father. My child shouldn't be disrespecting me. It really pisses me off when she glares at me all the time." Raising his voice, he sounded like a delinquent teenager. "Ugh, so annoying. Really, so annoying. You and Ella are both so annoying. I wish you'd just disappear." If these were the words of a son in the throes of a rebellion, maybe I could have handled it as a mother. But the reality is, Henry is Ella's father. These aren't words a father should say to his daughter. "Disappear? What are you saying? Are you sane?" "That's it. Talking to you was a waste of time. I've got to work now, you know. Unlike you, I'm busy. If you want to keep talking, pay me. $10 for 3 minutes should do. You work part-time, you can afford $10, right?" Henry couldn't hold back his laughter. "Part-time pay is what, about $8 an hour? Wow, with that stance, you dared to complain to me. You're living thanks to me, so making me feel comfortable is your job. First, deal with that selfish Ella. Make her unable to be selfish. Got it?" I felt hot all over. My brain seemed to boil. Dirty words I wanted to hurl at Henry kept coming to mind, but I couldn't speak them. Probably, my face was red with rage, shaking. Wow, what a weird face. Why did I even marry someone as annoying and ugly as you? Oh, right, because of Ella. So my life got messed up because of Ella? Everything's Ella's fault, huh? Henry left for work with a half smile. I suppressed the urge to scream and hit my chest hard. Luckily, Ella and Mila were still asleep. I despised Henry, of course, but I was also furious with myself. "Ella, Mila, I want to protect you." I crouched down and cried silently. How powerless I am. I want to leave Henry right away. but I can't. Just as Henry says, my part-time job pays less than $10 an hour. I alone can't provide my daughters with a life any different from now. Even such a father is necessary. Feeling powerless, ashamed, and unable to stop my tears. Mom, good morning. Mom, are you okay? I hear Ella and Mila's voices behind me. I can't show my daughters a mother crying. Crouching down, I couldn't even respond. After a while, I catch my breath and wipe away the tears. Then, I'm back to being the cheerful mother I always am. Sorry. Good morning, you two. Mom will make breakfast in a bit, so wait for me, okay? I smile brightly at my daughters and head towards the kitchen, but Ella grabs my hand tightly. Mila grasps the other hand. The warmth of their hands looking up at me seeps through. I want to protect them. Even more strongly, I resolve. Attempts to talk to Henry afterward were futile. Henry refuses to listen. The problem is Ella's annoying attitude. He insists. Indeed, Ella doesn't say it, but she obviously avoids Henry, so I advised her, but he smells. It's not good to express it in her attitude, even at her age. It hurts a father too. But Ella hesitantly mumbled, but as if it was difficult to say. The smell of Dad, I really hate it. Don't you notice, Mom? Ella's eyes filled with tears. Finally, she shared what she had been holding back in her heart. Sweet smell from Dad? Confused, I listened as Ella nodded. The relationship between Henry and Ella remained strained. Henry doted on Mila alone, treating Ella roughly. Mila is really cute. If only I have Mila, I'm happy. I was about to speak out in anger when Ella stopped me. Any words would only lead to a pointless argument. Mila only? That's stupid. Ella whispered so only I could hear, shrugging in exasperation. The incident happened this weekend. Unusually, I had part-time work on a Saturday, and I left for a half day. Part-time on a Saturday? Well, I'll take care of Mila, so you can work in peace. You'll earn at least tonight's dinner money, right? Irritated by Henry's sarcastic tone, but trusting him with Mila, his favorite, I let Ella go to a friend's house in the morning. After work dragged on, I hurried home around 2 p.m., later than the planned 1 p.m. Henry, did you feed Ella and the rest lunch? No, they might be waiting for me. As I went to unlock the entrance, I felt a slight presence from the garden. The garden, small, with just a pot of mini tomatoes Ella brought from school, now barren in winter, isn't a place the girls usually play. A bad feeling led me to peek into the garden. Ella? There, sitting on the soil of the garden, was Ella. Rushing over, I found her hugging her knees, her hands trembling from the cold. Ella? Why? Even with a coat on, her exposed cheeks and hands were red and blackened. I wrapped her ice-cold hands in mine and rubbed them to warm her up. Seeing my face, Ella smiled weakly, relieved. Mom, you're back. Sorry to keep you waiting, but why are you in the garden? What happened? Where's Dad? Ella, keeping a smile on her lips, murmured as if giving up. Mila and a family trip. Remembering how happy Henry was this morning about spending time with Mila, I had dropped Ella off at a friend's house and then headed straight to work. I had also told Henry that Ella would be back by noon. Around noon, when Ella came home, it seemed Henry and Mila were just leaving. A trip? A family trip? Announcing it as a family trip seemed like a malicious act filled with ill intent. And to leave Ella out in the cold without even unlocking the house? What do they think Ella's existence, Ella's life, is worth? Sorry. It must have been cold. It's okay now. I hugged Ella tightly. On the damp, cold soil, Ella finally let her tears fall. I don't want to see Ella's sad smile or her tears anymore. Then we'll move out, just the two of us. Huh? Ella was surprised. The move I had been planning for some time, deciding now was the time to act. But what about Mila? Mila will be okay. Encouraging Ella, who was a bit anxious, we immediately started preparing to move. While packing, I called Henry. It took several tries, but finally, Henry answered after I redialed a few times. What? You're calling too much. It's scary. He should know best why I was calling him repeatedly. Where did you go, leaving Ella behind? Out with Mila. She's my child. What's wrong with taking her out? It's okay to go out, but leaving Ella behind is terrible. I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't help raising my voice. I feared Henry would get angry if I spoke like that, but surprisingly, he was nonchalant. Ella's already in elementary school. It's fine. You're too overprotective. He seemed to be enjoying a family outing. From the other side of the phone, I could probably hear the joyful music of an amusement park. Give me back Mila. No way. Don't talk about her like she's your property. Mila loves me more than you. Henry laughed out loud. I wanted to cover my ears to block his unpleasant laughter, but I could faintly hear Mila's voice. Hey, is that Mom on the phone? Then the call was cut off. No matter how many times I redialed, I couldn't get through to Henry again. Having no other choice, I left a note on the table stating we were leaving and departed with Ella. Henry called late at night. Where are you? Why aren't you here? I left a note. Ella and I can't keep up with you anymore. That's why we left the house. Huh? What about meals? Even now, all he's worried about is meals. I was so dismayed I was speechless. Don't mess around. Your job is to make meals and clean. Hurry back. I'm not coming back. What? Then what about today's meal? It's unfair to just leave like this. If I didn't respond, Papa, I'm hungry. I could hear Mila whining. Papa, hey Papa, dinner. Mila, since Mom left on her own, there's no meal. This is so annoying. Maybe I'll order takeout. But then we spent quite a bit on the trip. What a hassle. While I was concerned about Mila, I hung up the phone. Henry should enjoy his precious time with the lovely Mila as much as he wants. And then, 3 days passed. Henry had been calling frequently, but I ignored all his calls. Today too, from early morning, the phone hasn't stopped ringing. The calls would end and then start again. Thinking it was about time, I answered the phone. Hey, I've called you so many times. What are you doing? Come back home now. That's why I'm not coming back. Shut up. Come back. Just somehow, please. I could feel the weariness in Henry's voice. Perhaps he was tired from being with Mila, something he had never involved himself with before. Pleaded by Henry, I returned home. As I opened the door, Mila ran towards me like a dog. She leaped into my arms with force. Mama, welcome back! Mila, I'm home. Were you lonely? Not at all. I'm fine. Mila answered brightly with a smile. From behind her, a worn-out Henry walked in. Where have you been, and what have you been doing all this time? Henry, with bags under his eyes, looked resentful. I left a note about leaving. More importantly, where did you take Mila without permission? To the amusement park. Before Henry could finish, Mila told me. I went to the amusement park with Papa. Wow, Mila, that's great. Did you have fun with Papa? You know, Amelia's mom was also there. Really? Amelia's mom? I turned around slowly while Henry looked away. Hey, Henry, who's Amelia's mom? Henry, avoiding my gaze, seemed to be searching for an excuse. Well, Amelia is... As Henry fumbled, Mila, with a beaming smile, revealed the truth. Amelia's mom is Mila's new mom. I have 2 moms now. Isn't that great? I stroked Mila's head, who seemed happy. No, that's not it. Mom is only Aurora. Right, Aurora? Henry was panicking. Making a child call your affair partner mom is the worst. I spoke in a surprisingly low voice. We have no choice but to divorce. It's because of your affair. No, wait. Let's not rush into a divorce. Really, it's not what it seems. And it's over with Amelia. Henry, usually so confident, was desperately trying to cling to me. I knew you were cheating. Huh? Ella told me. She said she could smell sweetness coming from you. She was avoiding you not because of the smell, but because she hated having a father who cheats. Hearing that Ella knew, even Henry grimaced, but he didn't stop making excuses. Amelia and I were just hanging out. It wasn't anything serious. And it's really over with her. Tell Ella it was a misunderstanding. So no divorce. Just 3 days ago, he had taken Mila on a fake family trip. It's hard to believe such words. But, well, it was inevitable, I nodded. So you got dumped by your affair partner? Henry nodded silently. You're a father with children. A man who easily breaks his family won't be happy, even if he remarries. Keep silent if you're going to spout nonsense like that. I'm not at fault. It's Mila's fault that Amelia dumped me. Henry pointed at Mila. What do you mean, Mila's fault? You enjoyed the amusement park, right? The amusement park, yes, but after you left, I had to bring Amelia home. That's the worst. It's your fault for leaving on your own. Even Amelia, after taking care of Mila for half a day, just left. That coward. Henry, though agitated, soon slumped his shoulders and drooped his back. By the way, Mila, what's going on with her? What do you mean? She's a kind girl. Even now, trying to stop our fight, she brought us snacks, filling up my hands and Henry's pockets. We couldn't hold any more, and yet, Mila ran back to get more snacks. At the amusement park, she was so excited she got lost many times, which was annoying. But worse than that, her tantrums since coming back from the park have been too much. I ordered takeout for dinner and she cried because she didn't want either hot dogs or hamburgers. Mila doesn't even like hot dogs or hamburgers to begin with. So I ordered pizza too, but she was still loudly fussing. Of course, Mila likes plain bread. She's particular about only having jam on it. Huh? You allow that kind of pickiness? Mila is out of control. She hardly sleeps at night, and when she does, she starts crying out. When am I supposed to sleep? So that's why the bags under Henry's eyes were so dark. Normally, Henry sleeps in a separate room from my daughters and me, but I guess he never bothered about the noise, considering it none of his concern. She's crazy, you know. The moment we go outside, she suddenly starts running. What's with that? I thought she was excited at the amusement park, but she just runs off into the street without any sense. I tried to walk her to kindergarten, but it was impossible. Henry was handed more snacks by Mila. Despite Mila looking up at him with a smile, Henry didn't return the smile and remained serious. Sitting down in the hallway, Henry held his head in his hands. I'm tired. It's your fault. You failed at parenting. You're a failure as a mother, aren't you? I squatted down in front of Henry, looking straight into his face. I'm a failure as a mother? What about you, who knew nothing about Mila, even though she's already 3 years old? What have you been looking at for these 3 years? Henry's face turned red with anger. Shut up! I'm working, so it's your responsibility to take care of the kids. Don't burden me anymore, just come back home. I sighed while still looking directly at Henry. Did we fail at parenting? Yeah, a massive failure. Really? Is that so? I stood up, looking down at Henry with cold eyes. So, the father who shows no interest in his children and cheats is the one who turned out to be a failure. Henry, that's what you've become. What? Being mean to a defiant child? Abandoning a child who doesn't do as you wish? Is that being a father? We don't need a failed father like that. Henry couldn't stand up under the pressure. Somewhere, I had thought parenting was my job, and I had been considerate of Henry, who was providing for us. But I can't want to continue as a family with Henry, whose foolishness has been so clearly exposed. Come back? No way. I just came to pick up Mila. Henry, you're not needed. I'm not your mom. I have no obligation to indulge your whims. Ugh, are you mad? Henry, usually so pompous, instantly loses his drive when I push back even a little. Sorry, I was wrong to cheat, but I'll properly break up with Amelia, okay? She's the worst, you know. She said she wanted to take care of cute little Mila if we got married, but she gave up after half a day. Useless, right? She's over 30 and still lives with her parents. Can't even make a meal. Mila's mom is only you, after all. Who was it that looked down on me as a failure as a mother just a while ago? Trying to smooth things over with whatever he says, I felt deeply that he's utterly untrustworthy. Right, I'm Mila and Ella's mother, so I'll never abandon them and will protect them. Then, as a father, I cut off Henry's voice. It's too late. We don't need Henry. Why don't you go back to your mom and get re-raised? Henry, whether out of anger or despair, trembled slightly with his hands on the floor. He breathed heavily and looked down. Papa, I'll give you some snacks. Worried, Mila stacked snacks in front of Henry. Henry slightly lifted his head and took Mila's hand. Mila, you like Papa, right? Yeah, I like you. So you'd be sad if Papa was gone, right? Not really. It's okay if you're not here. Henry's smile twisted. But you said you liked me, right? Yeah, I like you. This much. Mila showed how much by barely touching her fingertips together. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. That's basically zero. Then Mila spread her arms wide. And I love Mama this much. She ran down the hallway. From here to here. That's how much I love Mama, she shouted. You know, like bigger than our house. That's how much I love Mama. Like the universe. That's how much I love Mama. Mila's love was unstoppable. As Mila's smile shone brighter, Henry's face turned paler. So that's why we don't need Henry. Goodbye. Henry weakly raised his right hand as if to say, ugh, but seemed to lack the energy to call out. I picked up Mila and left the house we had shared with Henry. Left alone, Henry seemingly had no choice but to call back his affair partner, Amelia. Even if she was bad at household chores, she was probably better than Henry, who couldn't do anything. With the troublesome child gone, there was nothing to disrupt the two of them, so it wouldn't be surprising if their love rekindled. I learned about these two from the mom friends living nearby. They were surprised to see a woman they didn't know entering and exiting my house. I thanked them for their concern and made sure to explain the situation clearly to avoid any misunderstandings. The rumor quickly spread throughout the neighborhood and somehow even reached Henry's company. The world feels small indeed. About a month after I left the house, when I contacted Henry by phone, Aurora? He responded with a voice overflowing with joy. Long time! Have you been well? Missed me since I wasn't around? I've been waiting for a call from you. Even though you're living with your affair partner? How do you know? No, but I kicked her out. That was a lie. You were dumped by your affair partner, weren't you? Huh? It seems the rumor of being cheated on and abandoned by his wife made it difficult for Henry to stay at his company, and he ended up resigning. He probably thought he would find a new job quickly, since he was capable at work. Don't act so high and mighty when you're unemployed, right? So how do you know? Don't act so high and mighty when you're unemployed. That was the last thing the affair partner hurled at Henry. They had a big fight and were even yelling in front of the house, as I heard from the aforementioned mom friends. Probably you just ran away from an uncomfortable workplace, but couldn't find another job, right? Hit the nail on the head. Henry fell silent. And yet at home, you strutted around, not even bothering to carry your used dishes to the kitchen. Even your affair partner who loved you didn't have the hobby of catering to such an arrogant unemployment. Ugh. I gave you a chance to grow by telling you that you were a failure, but you couldn't improve. Henry's heart must have reached its limit, being hurt by his pride by me, the children, and his affair partner. The reason I contacted you today is not because I was worried about you, nor because I want to reconcile with you. I stated in an emotionless voice. Sign the divorce papers I sent before. quickly. There was no reason to keep in touch with Henry except to sever ties. Henry, not wanting to be attacked any further, agreed to the divorce amicably. We got a lawyer involved and received a proper settlement for alimony and division of property. This should ensure that my daughters and I won't have trouble living for the foreseeable future. Sorry for being late. When I returned home from work, a pleasant aroma filled the air. Oh, beef stew today, huh? Grandma and I made it. Great, I can't wait to eat. I moved back to my parents' house with my daughters. My parents aren't wealthy, and Ella had to change schools because the district changed. Friends can be made anywhere, but you only have one mama. I hesitated to rely on my parents, but Ella encouraged me. Now, with my parents' help, I can work full-time. Hey, Mama! Mila made the carrots in the beef stew into star shapes. Isn't Mila amazing? My parents indulged Mila's quirks and unbelievable actions with a smile. They seem to have more patience because she's a beloved grandchild. I remember them being stricter with me when I was a child, though. Ella and Mila's beef stew is so yummy. There's a secret ingredient. What could it be? Love? Ella shows a wry smile. The correct answer is chocolate. Mila couldn't hold back and blurted out the answer. Such an ordinary life feels overwhelmingly happy.
You work here? As a janitor, huh? Must be tough being poor. Those condescending words come from Cindy, my brother's wife. Even after not seeing each other for a while, she says this with a snide laugh. I've known for some time that she doesn't think highly of me. I had thought we'd grown apart and I'd never have to see her again. Boy, was I wrong. But I won't back down this time. The fact that she's here means, well, you'll see. Holding back a laugh, I keep my composure and respond. Her face freezes instantly upon hearing my words. My name is Lita. I'm 30 years old. I live with my husband Lucas and our daughter Layla. Lucas and I have been together since college. We started dating after being in the same club. After dating for 4 years, we got married when I was 25. The next year, we were blessed with Layla, who was born without any issues during the pregnancy. She's 3 now, growing up healthy and without any major illnesses. Unfortunately, my husband's parents have passed away and can't see her grow up. But my parents are showering her with love, making up for the absence of her other grandparents. Our condo is just a 10-minute drive from my childhood home. Originally, Lucas and I were supposed to still be living there. My parents had wanted us to live together when we first got married. Life was peaceful, living with my kind husband and warm-hearted parents. That peaceful routine shattered about 6 months into our marriage. My brother Cedric brought his wife home. I hadn't seen him for almost 5 years. Cedric had a falling out with our parents, dropped out of college, and left home. I had no idea where he was or what he was doing until he sent a text saying he was married, without even a congratulations. He was absent from family meetings and even our wedding. So you can imagine my surprise and anger when he suddenly showed up. But I decided to hear him out. What he and his wife said, however, exceeded all our expectations. The moment he came back home after years, he told Dad, "Dad, Cindy and I have decided to live here with you." "What the hell? You've been off the grid for years and now you just show up?" "Look, I know it's not ideal, but I'm married now and living with you is the least I can do, right?" "Don't be ridiculous. You didn't even come to Lita's wedding." "Well, I'm sorry for that, but as a son, it's my duty to live with you, so Lita and her husband need to leave." Suddenly, the room goes cold. Even Dad is at a loss for words. Amidst this, I finally speak up. "Wait a minute. You can't just waltz in and say that. Lucas and I are living here." "So what? You're just sucking up to Dad to get the house, aren't you?" "What? That's not true. I just want to live with my parents." Listen, you're just a daughter. A son, especially the eldest, like me, takes priority, even for living arrangements. Just because you're the son, just because you're the oldest, so what? You quit college on your own. You left home on your own. I can't take this nonsense anymore. Just get out. I grab my brother by the arm and drag him to the front door. We continue to argue at the door, but Cindy chimes in, "Let's just go home for today." So my brother begrudgingly leaves. This has left my parents and husband absolutely drained. We're all worried about what my brother might pull next. A few days later, the doorbell rings. When I open the door, a stranger stands there, and there's a mover's truck parked in front of the house. Confused, I ask the man, are you with the movers? I think you've got the wrong house." "Nope, this is the right house. We're here to move stuff on behalf of Cedric." "Cedric? My brother?" "Ah, so you are family. Well, excuse us then." Wait, hold on." The mover returns to his truck and signals his crew. Then several men start carrying boxes into our house. I didn't know anything about my brother moving in, not a word. My parents are out, so I can't confirm with them. Thinking I might be the last to know, I rush upstairs to my husband. "Hey, Lucas, you haven't heard anything about my brother moving in, have you?" "What? What are you talking about? There's no way." "Then come look. Movers are bringing in his stuff." "What? I've heard nothing about this." "Never mind, just come." I pull my husband downstairs. The hallway is already filled with boxes, and the movers are quickly adding more. My husband tries to intervene, but they respond, "We're just doing what we were asked. You are family, right?" We try calling my brother, but no answer. We try calling my parents, but their phones are on silent. Eventually, all the boxes are in, and the movers leave without another word. Faced with the pile of boxes, we're both struggling to understand what's happening. What's going on? Why does my brother have so much stuff here? Is he planning to move in without telling Dad or us? We consider the worst case scenario. We decide to wait for our parents to return home and discuss what to do. But then, an hour later, it's my brother and his wife who show up first. "Hey, Lita, we're moving in. You better get out." "My brother? You did move your stuff without telling anyone." "Why not? This was originally my home. What's wrong with bringing my stuff back?" "What? Are you kidding me?" While arguing, I hear a mocking laugh from behind. I turn around and see Cindy with a smug grin. Noticing my gaze, she says, "Oops, sorry," without a shred of sincerity. And then she taunts me with an audacious statement. "So you must be Lita, right? Can't listen to Cedric or something? How childish can you be?" Excuse me? What's this about? For the record, my brother left college on his own terms and moved out. Why bring this up now? "Haven't you heard? Cedric moved back in to live with your parents. He's such a good son." Look, we never asked for this. This is where my husband and I live, so please leave. "Too bad. We've already given up our condo." "What?" "Anyway, you guys are the ones who have to leave, not us, so good luck." Cindy then starts unpacking with my brother. Later, my parents return home and argue with my brother, but he and his wife refuse to leave. From that point on, life becomes a living hell. Every day, my husband and I are insulted by my brother and Cindy. They freely use and break our clothes and accessories. When we ask for an apology, they dismiss it with, "We're family, so what's the big deal?" Even when my pregnancy is confirmed, she says, "Lita, you're just a housewife, right? And Lucas's company is just an average one. Your child is going to be born into a poor family. That's so sad. Why are you having a baby before us? Read the room." I start to feel myself deteriorate mentally. Eventually, just being in the same room as them makes me cry, and I lock myself in my room all day. Seeing this, my parents suggest to my husband that we separate. It'll be too late if something happens to our unborn child. Apparently, my parents persuaded my husband to move out of their home as soon as possible. My husband immediately finds a new place for us to live, and we move there. Life becomes peaceful as if the past was a lie. The initial period after the move was shaky, but with my husband by my side, I managed to pull through. I delete my brother's contact, and I ask my parents not to give our address to him and Cindy. Soon, my parents start visiting us frequently, apparently ignoring my brother and Cindy back at the family home. They ask them for the living expenses and rent they'd be covering for us. When my brother and Cindy refuse to pay, my parents start throwing their belongings out into the yard. Unable to tolerate this treatment, they finally move out. It's been nearly 3 years since, and I haven't seen them. We considered living with my parents again, but we never know when my brother might show up. With that in mind, living at home was not an option for me. Also, our family home is aging. Recently, the possibility of my parents moving into our condo has come up. So there it was, another day. I was heading out the front entrance for some shopping when I saw a familiar face. The moment I saw her, bad memories came flooding back.
Oh my gosh, is that you, Lita? Oh my god.
It was Cindy who approached me with those words. Why are you here?
Why wouldn't I be? I'm here to check out this fancy apartment building.
Check it out? You're not planning to move here with my brother, are you?
Well, that's a secret. But running into you is a total surprise.
Still struggling financially, huh? Excuse me? Struggling? With that, Cindy cracked a smug grin. Then she pointed at my outfit and went on. That cheap-looking sweater and those skinny jeans must be tight on money to be walking out of here like that, right? What are you talking about?
Oh, you poor thing. You have a kid now, don't you? That's just so sad.
What's sad about it? My husband and I are happily raising our child.
Don't get all defensive. Someone like you with no redeeming qualities shouldn't even be having a kid.
Talk about delusional. Cindy burst out laughing. That was the tipping point. I'd had enough. Nothing had changed since I last saw her. Actually, she seemed even more focused on bringing people down. I couldn't stand it any longer. I'd had enough. I opened my mouth to speak, steeling myself for whatever came next. Look, what's your problem? I get that you don't like me, but can we just not get involved with each other?
What's the rush? Scared I saw you at your most pitiful?
Pitiful moment? What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. You're a janitor here, aren't you? Must be tough being poor.
Turns out she thought I was a janitor here, not a resident. It was an easy mistake to make. The high-rise apartment I currently live in is so expensive that there's no way we could afford it on my husband's salary alone. Cindy, who knew where my husband worked, assumed we couldn't afford to live here. In a tone full of disdain, she continued,
It's crazy. You're even working as a janitor just to be around this place. You must be really desperate, Lita.
Can you stop making assumptions? I'm not the janitor.
Oh, chill out. How about this? I'll keep quiet about seeing you here to Cedric. But in exchange, from today on, you're my servant. You'll do whatever I say. Got it?
She's assuming I'm the janitor in this luxury apartment building and even making a childish proposal. I've had enough. It's time to give her a dose of reality. Excuse me, what are you misunderstanding? This is my home. What? Cindy, who was all smiles moments ago, freezes in disbelief. Ignoring her obvious shock, I go on. Let me clarify. This is the home where I live, and it's owned by my husband.
Wait, what are you talking about?
This luxury apartment was originally one of the properties owned by my husband's parents. Now it's been passed on to my husband, who rents it out through a real estate agent. The reason my husband was able to find a new home so quickly is because he owns this place. He inherited this luxury apartment from his parents, and it was originally meant for renting out. He prepared it to protect me from my brother and his wife. Now I've also started learning the ropes, helping out with the real estate agent to lessen the burden on my husband. Her name should have been recognizable to me from the start. My husband and I never saw my brother's or Cindy's name on the list of prospective renters from the real estate agent. Ignoring her shock, I press on. Cindy, who did you come here with today?
What? I came with Cedric, of course.
I didn't hear my brother's name from the real estate agent, so you came with someone else?
No way, I came with Cedric, and
just then, an unfamiliar man runs up from behind her and says, "Sorry to keep you waiting." He puts his arm around Cindy's waist and gives her an affectionate kiss. At that moment, I know what's going on. She also realizes I've caught on, so she hurries to distance herself from the man. I make sure he can hear me as well as I speak up. Cindy, are you sure it's okay to be here like this? Being a housewife and gallivanting around, you'll tire my brother out, you know.
Hey, what are you talking about?
Oh, what's this? A married woman on a date with another man? Or is he just a friend? I have to tell my brother.
Stop it, please.
She pleads desperately, tears forming in her eyes. But I'm done holding back. I spoke strongly to her, who's pleading with her eyes, not to make any more unnecessary comments. You really have some nerve, don't you? Making people miserable, pushing them to their limits, and you haven't changed one bit. And now you're cheating? You're as low as they come.
Wait, Lita, please, shut up.
Because of you and my brother, I've suffered a lot. How dare you mock people without even an apology? I will never forgive either of you. You'll experience the pain I went through, and then some. At my words, she collapses on the spot, lying face down on the ground, sobbing loudly. That's how Cindy's affair came to light after I reported it to my brother. Turns out she was also hiding the fact that she was already married and had been persuading her lover to buy this high-rise apartment for her. Caught red-handed, Cindy ended up getting sued for marriage fraud by her lover. Shockingly, my brother was also having an affair with someone at work. His affair got exposed around the same time at his company, and he was demoted to provincial office. Cindy apparently followed him, but they both kept blaming each other for their predicaments. Both were hit with hefty fines. Cindy from her lover, and my brother from the lover's husband. They couldn't cover the costs with Cindy's status as a former housewife and my demoted brother's salary, so they even resorted to illegal lenders recently. It's going to be a long time before they get back on the straight and narrow. And no, I'm not going to help them. As for me, life continues to be happy with the family of 3. Thanks to my husband's generosity, my parents will also be moving into the same high-rise apartment building next month. We won't be living together, but it's another way to be close to them. I couldn't be more grateful to my husband. I plan to live my life to the fullest, cherishing those around me.
Hey, mister. I'm the daughter of this company's owner, all right? My dad's the boss. Don't lump me with these lowly, poor employees. Surprised by both her vulgarity and her true identity, my dad paused with a shocked expression, then cleared his throat softly. Meanwhile, Carol wore a smug look, as if she had just made a grand statement. Remembering that Dad originally came to our company for business, I realized we couldn't afford to cause any more trouble. So I tried to apologize to Carol. Just then, Dad spoke in a low voice. So, the lower ranks are the poor employees, huh? Maybe it's time to revise the salary structure. He muttered this almost to himself. What? Are you mocking me? Fine. Mister, what's your name? Which subcontractor do you work for? I'll tell Dad about you. It might just be your fault if the company goes under. Carol retorted. Dad, looking slightly puzzled, thought for a moment before breaking into a smile. Then, let's go say hello to the boss. Lenore and the others, come along. Everyone except Dad looked shocked, but he walked ahead. Not wanting to be left behind, we hurried after him. My name is Lenore. I'm a hardworking 28-year-old. The company I work for is quite large, and I work tirelessly every day. My dad, concerned about me, contacts me once a week, but I always reply with, "Don't worry," trying to reassure him, almost forcibly. His concern is probably because he wants to recruit me to his company. 7 years ago, when I was still a college student, I was busy with job hunting every day to secure a job offer. Dad, who runs his own company, once invited me to join his company, saying, "Why bother with job hunting? You can just come work for my company." It's not that I didn't want to go to his company, but I didn't want to rely on such connections. I wanted to succeed on my own merit. And I wanted to work alongside him, as an equal, once I was fully competent at my job. I explained this and persuaded him. Reluctantly, he agreed, and I joined my current company. It's been 6 years since I started working here. Now, I have more responsibilities, and I even have subordinates. And it's our busy season. It's not uncommon for our department heads to be absent from the office for an entire day during this time, and sometimes I can't even sit at my desk for more than 30 minutes. We're that busy. I don't have the luxury of constantly worrying about Dad's feelings. Today, I've been bustling around the office since morning. Even amidst the rush, a shrill voice caught my ear as I passed by a meeting room, prompting me to stop. The door was slightly ajar, and peering inside, I saw a woman with a tray bowing her head before another woman who sat arrogantly, berating her. "How many times do I have to tell you? I don't like coffee, I want Coke." It seemed the employee had brought the wrong beverage. The angry woman looked younger than me, but whose guest was she? A frequent complainer, perhaps? It's disgraceful to fuss over complimentary beverages. I wondered what her parents would think. Just as I was about to open the door and intervene. "Ah, there she goes again." I heard a voice behind me. Turning around, I saw my colleague Sissy peeking into the room. "You scared me. Don't just start talking out of nowhere." I chided her in a whisper, careful not to be overheard. "Sorry. But it's unexpected to see you peeking, Lenore," she said with a mischievous grin. Sissy is only a year younger than me, even though she's my subordinate. We get along well and often go out for drinks. Professionally, she's my subordinate, but in our private lives, we're like friends. I wasn't peeking. "By the way, Sissy, do you know who that woman is?" I asked. "Oh, she's quite notorious around here," Sissy replied with a slight smirk. "That's Carol, the boss's only daughter." "His daughter? But why is she here?" I inquired, puzzled. "She occasionally comes to play around like this, throwing her weight around with the staff. No one dares to contradict her because she's the boss's daughter." As Sissy explained, Carol continued to berate the employee. "Go buy me a Coke! What's your name? I'll tell Dad!" she shouted. I want to help that employee, my colleague, but I hesitated. "Let's get back to work for now, Lenore," Sissy suggested. "Poor thing, we don't keep Coke for guests." Sissy gently closed the meeting room door, holding the handle that I was gripping. She enjoys bossing the staff around like this. She never actually reports anyone. Last week, it was ginger ale. "You have work to do, Lenore. She's not worth your time." Her words reminded me of the tasks I had to complete. Sissy, are you free now? Want to come to the warehouse with me?" "Sure. I was actually looking for you. I have some business there too." We left the meeting room, the shouts still echoing, with heavy hearts. Why does Carol come here to play? She should be having fun with friends. She looks college-aged. I pondered aloud while checking inventory in the warehouse. Apparently, she's joining the company next year. She's been visiting frequently for that. You'd think she'd rather be with friends, but she doesn't seem to have many. Sissy commented. True. I mused, feeling uneasy about Carol. Shouldn't she value the employees who support her family's business? Especially since they'll be her coworkers and supervisors next year? It's not right to treat them as mere playthings. Does she not realize she's embarrassing her parents? As I pondered these things, the pressure of my pen on the inventory notes inadvertently grew stronger. Noticing this, Sissy glanced at my notes. I get why you're angry, Lenore. She's exactly the type of person you dislike the most, she said with a wry smile. That's true, but what really irks me is the boss and the executives who say nothing. They should reprimand her for such behavior. Apparently, she's an overindulged child, born late in her father's life. Sissy explained with a gentle smile, easing me back into work mode. Thanks to her, I managed to finish the warehouse work surprisingly quickly. Exhausted from the day, I was heading home when my mobile phone rang. It was a message from Dad. Lenore, I'm coming to your company tomorrow for a business deal. If you're free, I'd like to see you. I was surprised. Dad was visiting my office? The company I work for is in the same industry as his company, and I knew they were connected, but it was the first time he had shown his face at my company in the 6 years I've been working there. I hoped to see him, but it really depended on timing, so I just replied, If I'm free, I'll come and see you. Let me know. And then closed the message. The next day, my office was busy, but things started to calm down by lunchtime. While eating, I received a message from Dad. I'll be at your company soon. I checked the time and decided to wait for him outside. As I got up, Sissy, sitting next to me, asked, Where are you rushing off to, Lenore? It's still lunch break. Oh, my dad is visiting the office today. I thought I'd go say hi since it's been a while. What? Can I come too, just to greet him? She asked excitedly. Sure, let's go together, I agreed. Sissy followed me, checking her reflection in the window and fixing her hair. I was pleased to have such an eager subordinate. While Sissy and I waited for my dad at the entrance. Is that him? She suddenly pointed to a taxi. I shook my head. Steve would have driven his own car rather than take a taxi. As we looked in the opposite direction, a shrill voice called out, Nice of you to meet me here. I pretended not to hear, but Sissy made a disgusted face as if to say this is the worst. Hey, you over there, where are you looking? I'm right here. I turned around, frustrated. And there was Carol. She was dressed inappropriately for the office, in a flouncy miniskirt and casual t-shirt, clacking her heels as she walked towards us. Excuse me, but you're mistaken. We're waiting for someone else here, I said, looking away again. In an ear-piercing tone, Carol shouted, What's with that attitude? Aren't you an employee here? Apologize right now. Sissy looked at me with a panicked expression. Yes, I'm an employee. But why should I apologize? I responded calmly. What? Carol seemed even more incensed by this. You, a lowly employee, think you can talk to me like that? Really, old lady? Well, a company needs its lowly employees, doesn't it? And for your information, I'm only 28, not an old lady. Carol burst into laughter at my reply. 28? You look much older. Is it hard being poor? I pity you, she said, pointing at me mockingly. I was furious, but I couldn't do much since she was the boss's daughter. I had to stand there, seething in silence, as she laughed. Then, Hey, Lenore! Long time no see! I heard a voice from afar. Approaching us was Dad, a slightly overweight, ordinary-looking man in a suit, waving his hand. Who's that weird guy? Hilarious, Carol said, looking at him and laughing. That was the last straw for me. Excuse me, that's rude. I raised my voice. What? Who are you yelling at? Carol yelled back. What's going on? Are you all friends? Unaware of the situation, Dad smiled at me kindly. What? As if I would be friends with these people. Carol snapped at him, switching her target from me to him. Dad's expression changed immediately. How rude to say these people when you are colleagues who work together. He was right, but Carol wasn't convinced. Listen, old man. I'm the daughter of this company's owner. My dad is the boss. Don't lump me with these lowly, poor employees. Dad looked shocked by Carol's rudeness and her identity, then cleared his throat softly. Meanwhile, Carol looked smug, as if she had just triumphed. Remembering that Dad originally came to our company for business, I realized we couldn't afford to cause any more trouble. So I tried to apologize to Carol. But at that moment, Dad spoke in a low voice. So, the lower ranks are the poor employees, huh? Maybe it's time to revise the salary structure. He muttered this to himself. What? Are you mocking me? Fine. Mister, what's your name? Which subcontracting company are you from? I'll tell my dad about you. You might just ruin the company. Carol spat out. Dad, looking puzzled, thought for a moment before smiling. Well then, let's go greet the boss. Lenore and the others, come along. The only one unfazed by the situation was Dad, who had already started walking ahead. Not wanting to be left behind, we quickly followed him. We reached the boss's office, and Dad entered first. Sissy and I followed, tense. Carol, pushing past us, rushed to her father. Dad! This man, he... She began to tattle immediately. Before Carol could finish, her father spoke loudly. This man? Who are you talking to? I'm sorry, Steve. My daughter lacks manners. He shot Carol a sharp look to silence her, then turned to us with a smile. Ah, it's your daughter with you today? Did you know about me? I asked, surprised. Dad sat down on a sofa. Wait, Dad! Carol protested. Dad gave me a kind look, then turned his sharp gaze to the boss. Earlier, your daughter called my daughter and her colleague lowly, poor employees. What's this about? The boss's face tightened. Well, they deserved it. They were rude to me, just low-end employees. Carol continued in her shrill voice. What? The boss turned pale and shouted angrily at Carol. What are you saying? This lady is the daughter of a valued client, and this man is her father and the current boss. Eh? Carol's face turned pale, realizing the gravity of her actions. To think such a large company still treats its employees as poor. You've become quite the boss, haven't you? If your employees are poor, shouldn't the company be ashamed? The boss was sweating profusely. I can't leave my daughter in such a place. She'll resign today. When the boss heard that, he immediately apologized to my dad and said, I'm terribly sorry. I've heard your daughter is very skilled. Please, not resignation. And you apologize to him. Wait, Dad. What's going on? I whispered to him. I had let the boss know that you were employed here, to look out for you. As I knew that you don't like the preferential treatment, I told him just to keep an eye out. Ignoring the boss and his daughter, Steve explained kindly. But I never thought this company would treat its employees like slaves. Lenore, you can quit now. You've done well here for 6 years. Come work for me. That's sudden. I can't just leave in the middle of the busy season. I protested. Dad seemed a bit exasperated by my response, but he eventually agreed. All right, if you insist. After this busy season, come work for my company. And you, it must be uncomfortable staying here after this. What do you say? The industry is the same. He kindly offered this to Sissy. Yes, absolutely. Sissy replied immediately. Wait, Sissy. I haven't decided yet. I protested. Sissy looked at me quizzically. Why not? Your dad's company is one of the elite in the country, and you're his daughter. Why wouldn't you go? Dad nodded in agreement with Sissy's words. I don't want to join his company just because of connections. I know Dad's company is big, but I didn't want to take the easy way. I explained. Sissy smiled happily. That's so like you, Lenore. And she continued. Lenore's father, I'm Sissy. I really appreciate that I can work with her. She is an outstanding boss. As she praised me, Dad smiled and sobbed along. I felt embarrassed and urged Dad to continue. Dad, the boss is still. Ah, right, forgot about that. Sorry, Sissy, we'll talk later. Yes. Sissy cheerfully replied. Now, boss, no need to apologize anymore. Let's end our business dealings here. As my dad finally addressed to him, he was surprised and looked up at Dad. That would be a great loss for us. I'm truly sorry. No, it's fine. This isn't because of the disrespectful behavior towards them. Then why? He asked. Please guide me. I'll improve anything. I'll definitely make improvements. The company would suffer a huge blow if they lost their dealings with Dad. That's why the boss kept apologizing repeatedly. Improvement is impossible. Once trust is lost, it can't be regained. You say employees are your priority, yet your daughter treats them like slaves. Did you think I wouldn't hear about it? I'm not sure. Even from the side, I can see Carol turned pale. I could demote you from the boss, but should I? Dad asked. Please, forgive me. The boss pleaded. Hey, Dad. Just because you're a valued client, you can't really do that, can you? I asked. I can. Dad replied with a smile, indicating he really had the power. I don't inquire deeply into the relationship between the boss and Dad, but Dad might be more powerful in this industry than I thought. With this realization, the both attitudes of my dad and the boss make sense. I won't go that far since I'm not a child, but I will end our contract. Thank you for your business. With that, he stood up, straightening his suit. Please, I'm begging you. Just for this term, please reconsider. How about a promotion for your daughter? No, a raise. She can even become an executive right now. Dad! But you said I would start from manager because of how it looks to others. An immediate promotion to executive is impossible. At that moment, my dad's look at the two changed to one of disdain. And the boss's pleading eyes were fixed squarely on Carol. Despite this, Carol still seemed dissatisfied with the difference between what her father had said about my position and her own treatment. I almost felt sorry for the boss with such an oblivious daughter. But I had reached my limit and couldn't hold back anymore. You plan to put a woman who called us lowly, poor employees and was rude to Dad in a position of authority? I blurted out. Well, my daughter doesn't understand because she hasn't experienced the real world yet. She'll learn to respect others through the hardships of society. Respecting others has nothing to do with social experience. I interjected, louder than I intended. Carol looked up, startled, and I addressed her. A company cannot function without its employees. Even someone who has never been an executive, like me, understands this. But you don't. Why? How would I know that? Carol seemed genuinely clueless. Do you think being a daughter of privilege puts you above others? Of course. I'm from a different upbringing. It's not my decision, it's God's. To Carol's nonsensical reply, I forced a smile. Then, as the daughter of this company's boss, I'm higher than you, right? You'll listen to me? My smile was apparently so frightening that Sissy later told me it scared Carol, whose composure vanished. Fine, what do you want? This company is not your playground. If you want to play, go find your college friends. Carol hung her head in shame, her face flushed. Sissy quietly applauded me. Well said. That's my daughter. Dad laughed heartily. After that, Sissy and I spent a hectic month at work. But the second half of the busy season was unexpectedly calm. Each time our supervisors and colleagues looked puzzled, Sissy and I exchanged knowing smiles. A month later, Sissy and I resigned and joined my dad's company. Our previous company began to decline drastically. Rumors quickly spread that the abrupt termination of the contract with a major firm was to blame, prompting other companies to reconsider their dealings. Sales plummeted by 40%, most employees started job hunting, and the company's decline accelerated. The general meeting decided the crisis was due to the boss's fault, and he was ousted. His brother is now trying to rebuild the company. According to Dad, this brother is well respected. The company might be reborn into something better. On the condition that the former boss's family no longer be involved, Dad began moves to restart dealings with them. I also heard from Dad that the former boss's family began to lose their possessions, eventually selling their house. I don't know where they went, but I doubt a family accustomed to such wealth could adapt to normal life. In fact, Carol reportedly got a job at a grocery store, acted arrogantly to customers, got into an argument, and was fired within hours, becoming somewhat of a legend. In my personal life, I managed to convince Dad to let me start as a regular employee instead of directly becoming an executive. However, I'm aware that I'll eventually take over the company. So, I balance my everyday tasks with assisting the executive team. Constantly amazed by their innovative ideas that never occur to me, sometimes feeling overwhelmed. But every time I feel like my head is about to explode, Sissy is there by my side, saying, "Lenore, let's finish this task first. Then we can decide the priority for the next ones." Her support keeps me grounded. Sometimes the pressure of being the boss's daughter feels crushing, but with Sissy around, I can stay confident and cope. Interestingly, Dad also likes Sissy, and sometimes the three of us go out for drinks. Every time Dad gets tipsy and tells this joke, "Lenore will be the next president, and Sissy the next executive officer. Don't even think about getting married and retiring, you too." He often tells this story laughingly. However, what Dad doesn't know is that I'm secretly in a relationship. My desire to get married is still a secret from Dad. "Why are you sitting down? It's common sense for a wife to stand." I was 7 months pregnant. At a family gathering, my stomach started hurting, so I sat down, only for my husband to kick my stomach. "Hey Thomas, what the hell do you think you're doing?" "Shut up! Besides, it's probably just a girl in there." Brian also changed his tone and called out to Thomas. But Thomas retorted without any regard for me and arrogantly dismissed it. I watched Thomas as he walked away. Unaware of my gaze, Thomas sat down with a mean smirk. However, my gaze shifted to a person who stood up in front of Thomas. This person walked up to the seated Thomas and then took a certain action against him. "My name is Elizabeth. I'm 30 years old. I moved from the countryside to New York for college and then found a job. I married Thomas 2 years ago, and we're now expecting our first child. I met Thomas at work, where he was the son of the president of a client company. Thomas has an older brother, Brian, who works as a senior executive in the company and is a so-called elite with a degree from a foreign university. There are rumors that Brian might become the president. Although Thomas isn't the heir, he seems to intend to work in the company as a senior executive for a long time. At first, I wondered why someone like him would take an interest in me. But Thomas's persistent courtship didn't stop, and I eventually started dating him. Thomas was very kind, and his company was stable with a long history. I became more attracted to Thomas and decided to get married. I quit my job when we got married, influenced by a comment from my mother-in-law, Karen. It's only natural for a woman to focus on her family after getting married. And at least until the child is 3 years old, the mother should raise them. When I announced my pregnancy, Karen first told me this. Apparently, she didn't like that Brian's wife, Linda, didn't quit her job even after getting pregnant and giving birth. It's pitiful to send children to preschool. Working while leaving your child in preschool makes our company look bad. Karen would badmouth and complain about Linda every time we went to visit. Thomas, hearing this, wouldn't stop Karen's complaint. Brian's just too lenient with Linda, but would instead agree with her. I don't have any entrepreneurs in my circle. So maybe there's something I don't understand between the eldest son's wife and the mother-in-law. That's why I couldn't say anything about their conversations. However, perhaps interpreting my silence as agreement, both Thomas and Karen thought I shared their views, and their bad-mouthing of Linda only escalated. After all, it's not like the company would be in trouble without Linda working. Maybe Linda is saving up money for when she divorces Brian. Nothing good comes when a woman has money. There were times when I thought it was too much, but I was too ashamed to argue back. I had heard that Linda wanted to work because she felt the company couldn't function without her. But Karen seemed to dislike that statement itself. Elizabeth quit right away, so we don't have to worry about that. Unlike Linda, I wasn't against quitting my job. So, I didn't resist much when I was told to quit. However, I definitely felt uncomfortable with Karen and Thomas, who never asked about my feelings. Because of this, I became a housewife right after getting married. But then, Thomas started to make comments that seemed to look down on me. "You're not working, so at least do the housework properly." He would complain like this when he came home. Of course, I did what I could, like cleaning, laundry, and preparing meals. But as a newbie housewife, I didn't know what more I could do, and I started to feel uneasy whenever Thomas was around. When I went to my parents' house, Thomas would even complain to Karen that I, a housewife, couldn't even do household chores properly. Believing him, Karen also started to complain to me. "Elizabeth, it's troublesome if you don't properly support Thomas. The wives of my sons are all so useless." Karen started to scold me too, and I felt smaller every time I visited my husband's family. Yet, at least it's better than Brian's place. Those two don't even bother to visit our home. Well, that's true. But hearing that made it impossible for me to distance myself from my husband's family. I feared the backlash I might face if I ever distanced myself from them, especially after seeing Thomas's proud expression every time those words were said. Gradually, I began to think that I was better off than Linda, the eldest son's wife, despite how harshly Thomas treated me or how much Karen scolded me. Thinking I was better than Linda somehow helped me get through it. Time passed since our marriage, and I found out I was pregnant. Both Thomas's parents and Thomas himself were very happy about it. One day, I went shopping alone. It was for dinner groceries. However, I started feeling sick on the way and couldn't make it to the supermarket, ending up sitting on the side of the road. "Are you okay?" Someone approached me at that moment. "Oh, isn't this Elizabeth? What happened?" It was Linda, coincidentally. She had just finished her part-time job and was on her way to pick up her daughter from preschool. Among those who passed by me without a word, Linda stopped her car to check on me. Having heard so much about Linda from Karen and Thomas, I didn't trust her and brushed her off. "I'm fine." I pushed her away, but Linda stubbornly said, "I'll drive you home, so get in the car." I hadn't finished shopping, but I wasn't in a condition to shop. Hesitantly, I got into her car, and Linda bought me tea and drove me home. It felt like it had been a long time since someone had been so kind to me. I was moved to tears. Maybe it was because the morning sickness had made me emotionally fragile. Linda listened to my story the entire way and comforted me. Later, remembering my complaint about not being able to eat anything due to morning sickness, she brought me jelly and ice cream. "These are what I eat, so I don't know if you can eat them, Elizabeth. I was very grateful when she handed them to me. However, that night, when Thomas opened the refrigerator, he frowned at its contents in confusion. What's with this jelly? And all this ice cream? It's a waste of money, especially when you're not working, I retorted. No, that's not it. Linda brought them over because I was having a hard time with morning sickness and couldn't manage. Linda did? I nodded in response. I explained how Linda had coincidentally helped me when I felt ill on the street and couldn't move, and how she had later brought me some snacks. Hearing this, Thomas frowned. I see, we've caused her trouble. Or, that was kind of her. That's why I told him the story, but Thomas's reaction was far from what I had imagined. What are you doing? Don't make us owe that couple anything. After I finished my story, Thomas said that, holding his head in his hands. Huh? Why? She helped us. There's no need to talk like that. I couldn't help but voice my opinion. Then, Thomas glared at me with sharp eyes and slowly took out a trash bag. Just throw this away. And began to throw away the snacks one by one. I could only watch in shock. Never rely on the money from someone who disregards mom's advice and works on her own. Thomas said that. In Thomas's view, Karen's words were absolute. I couldn't find the words to respond. After that, Linda contacted me a few times, concerned about my health, but I always told her I was fine to avoid any trouble with Thomas. There were days when I felt so ill I wanted to ask someone for help. No matter how bad my morning sickness was, if I cut corners with the housework, Thomas would complain. Yet, the one thing I couldn't do was ask Linda for help. Somehow, my morning sickness settled down, and I reached 7 months of pregnancy. At the recent checkup, the baby's growth was on track, and we found out the gender, so we slowly started preparing for the arrival. It looks like the baby is going to be a girl, I reported to Thomas right away. Huh. But he seemed not very interested. Maybe men have a harder time feeling the reality of becoming a parent, and Thomas is probably no exception. I didn't say anything more about it. Then we welcomed the new year. Every new year, relatives gather at my husband's family home. Even my brother-in-law's family, who usually don't visit, come with their whole family for the new year. I'm home. Happy New Year! We visited my husband's family home together on January 2nd. Happy New Year! Elizabeth, how are you feeling? It seemed the brother-in-law's family had arrived earlier, and Linda immediately spoke to me. She's fine. Don't worry about it. Even though she was addressing me, Thomas responded with a forced smile to Linda and went inside without properly greeting her. Elizabeth, I've been waiting for you. It's been lonely without someone to talk to. Karen welcomed me as usual. Despite Linda being there, Karen said she was lonely, which made me greet her with a wry smile. However, the incident happened that night. To prepare for dinner, Karen, Linda, and I were in the kitchen. Apart from us, there were about 15 relatives, including my father-in-law's siblings, gathered at my husband's family home. Thomas, who had already started toasting with the relatives, was speaking the loudest. Work is going smoothly, and Elizabeth listens well to me and Mom, so my life is going great with a good wife. That wasn't a compliment to me. It was clear to everyone that it was a dig at Brian and Linda. Elizabeth, could you bring the beer? Yes. Karen seemed to find me more convenient to use than Linda, always asking me for help. I was bustling around with my big belly. But, inevitably, I started to feel some discomfort from moving too much. Linda was the first to notice. Elizabeth, you've been rubbing your stomach. Are you in pain? Oh, really? You should have said something. You need to rest for a bit. Karen quickly responded to Linda's observation. Though her tone was a bit sharp, she told me to take a break. Thinking I'd be in the way in the kitchen, I sat in a chair in the room next to the living room, rubbing my belly and watching what was happening around me. In front of me, Brian was feeding his and Linda's son, Anthony. Are you okay, Elizabeth? If you can't do something, you should tell Mom. Your health is important. Thank you. Brian said that to me. And we chatted for a bit. We talked about when Anthony was born and what he likes now. Hearing stories from Brian, a father, was very insightful, and it was clear he was very involved in parenting. Do you know the gender of your baby? Yes, it seems to be a girl. That'll be cute. However, Thomas, who overheard this, seemed displeased and stood up with a sour expression. I thought he might be heading to the bathroom, but instead, he came straight over to me. Why are you sitting down? What? I was taken aback by his sudden question. As I asked Thomas for clarification, he shockingly kicked my stomach. It wasn't with much force, but I involuntarily cried out and doubled over in the chair, clutching my belly. The shock of being treated that way left me unable to move, more than the pain itself. Dramatic much. It's common sense for a wife to stand. Why are you sitting here chatting while making Mom work? Hey, Thomas. What do you think you're doing? What's the big deal? It's just a girl in there anyway. Eventually, she'll get married and leave, and she won't be any use to the company, so it's fine. Brian's tone changed as he addressed Thomas. However, Thomas retorted without any consideration for me and arrogantly dismissed it. Hey, that's too much. Although I couldn't see who it was, I heard a relative calling Thomas out. I've decided not to be a pathetic husband who spoils his wife like someone else. If my wife is being negligent, it's up to me to correct her. Laughing, Thomas said this and then walked away from me. The problem is that Brian can't control Linda. He lets her do whatever she wants. Do you think someone like that can control the company in the future? Dad should think about it. I think I'm more suited to be the president. I'm sure Mom thinks the same. Hearing this, I felt like I finally understood what Thomas was thinking. Thomas's behavior of affirming everything Karen said and acting under her influence was probably to gain her support. The same goes for saying bad things about Brian and others. It seems that Karen was upset about losing the position of president to her eldest son, Brian, so she decided to have Karen tell her father-in-law to make her president. That's why he had been forcing me to act in a way that would make Karen like me. I glared at Thomas, who was laughing and sitting in his own seat, unaware of my gaze. However, my attention then shifted to my father-in-law, Richard, who stood up in front of Thomas. Richard, confirming that Thomas had sat down, silently stood up and approached Thomas. What? And then, Richard kicked Thomas hard. Everyone was left speechless by this. Even Thomas was stunned and unable to speak, staggering from the impact. You don't have a child inside you, so it should be fine. And if a child is wrong, it's up to the father to correct them. Richard said this and tried to grab Thomas by the collar. Dad, calm down. The one who stopped him was Brian, who had been ridiculed by Thomas all this time. Brian, aren't you upset about being talked down to all this time? Richard said this. But Brian just laughed. Not at all. I actually felt sorry for him. What? Because it's true, right? Obsessing over the title of president to the point where you can't even cherish your family. If you're that desperate to be president, then go ahead, let Thomas do it. Thomas turned beet red at those words. The company and the title of president that he wanted so much. Maybe he felt like he had lost to Brian, who had said something that made him give it away so easily, and maybe he was also embarrassed by being called pitiful. Plus, I believe family should work together and respect each other, not control each other. The same goes for our employees. I want to create a company where employees cooperate and respect each other. Since I'm not good at controlling people, Thomas, who can control things better, should do it. Besides, my family is more important to me. It was clear who was more suited to be president. Despite Brian provocatively offering the presidency to Thomas twice, Thomas, being the person in question, couldn't find the words to respond and just turned redder. He only opened and closed his mouth without saying anything coherent. All right, that's enough. Linda was the one who changed the tense atmosphere. Thank you, Richard, for standing up for Brian. Richard showed a slightly embarrassed expression at her words. And Thomas looked down, even more frustrated. Thomas, did you think Brian couldn't control me because I sent Anthony to preschool before he was 3, just like Karen said? Because that's the reality, right? We're a president's family, and we have to consider how it looks from the outside. Brian really thought about it. He wouldn't let you work, Linda. Thomas only seemed confident when he could argue back. I was utterly astounded by such a Thomas. Indeed, that's true. But it's not like Brian didn't think about it. He asked me to quit too. But I wanted to work, so I asked him. If you're going to blame someone, blame me alone. Compared to them, Brian and Linda seemed wonderful to me. Their relationship, where they care for and respect each other's desires, was admirable. It made me feel foolish for ever worrying about what Karen said. Until the child is 3? What's that about? Was Karen saying such arbitrary things? Richard seemed unaware of Karen's statements and sighed in exasperation, apologizing. I'm sorry, Linda and Elizabeth, for any distress caused by Karen's words. Please, there's no need to apologize. And hearing Thomas's words earlier, I'm truly sorry, Elizabeth, for how Thomas's foolishness must have made you feel uncomfortable. Richard sincerely apologized to us without concern for others' opinions. Instead of needing an apology, I felt guilty that Richard was apologizing to us when he was actually protecting us. Karen, who had come into the living room at some point, was flustered by Richard's demeanor. I just meant... She tried to make excuses with an uncomfortable expression. While I believe her comment about children staying home until age 3 wasn't intended to be malicious, the fact remains that her complaints and harsh words hurt Linda and pressured me. Karen, don't make excuses. Isn't it embarrassing to interfere in parenting? Richard reprimanded Karen, who seemed to finally realize the foolishness and irresponsibility of her words. Linda, we're truly grateful to your family's company. Of course, you're welcome to continue working. We understand that the company can't function without you, so please continue to support us in both business and personal matters. Richard then addressed Linda, which confused everyone. Thomas, Karen, myself, and even the other relatives were puzzled by his words. Dad, remember we agreed not to talk about Linda's family business? Brian said with a laugh, followed by a troubled smile from Linda. What does that mean? I asked Linda, as I'm sure everyone was wondering the same. Linda opened her mouth to meet his expectations. My dad's the president of the company. My marriage to Brian and the company have nothing to do with each other, but it seems Brian only told Richard about it. The room went silent at Linda's words. The company she mentioned was well known in the area, much larger than Richard's and also a business partner. Linda's father, the president, was busy and disliked public appearances, so no one knew his face. Karen and Thomas had met him as Linda's father but had no idea he was the president. Linda worked as an executive director in her family's company. The revelation shocked Thomas and Karen, who had been disparaging Linda's work. The two of them have been making fun of Linda, who works there. They probably never expected her to be the daughter of the president of a company that their company is indebted to. They were at a loss for words, unable to even formulate an apology. However, it's clear after today's events that I cannot entrust the company to Thomas. Thomas finally received a definitive statement from his father-in-law. I understand you care about the company and its dealings, but a company is its employees. Someone who can't cherish their family can't possibly cherish their employees. Thomas, pale-faced, pleaded for forgiveness with a deep apology. You're right, Dad. I was wrong. Please give me another chance. Despite Thomas's desperation, Richard raised his voice again. You're apologizing to the wrong person. At those words, Thomas, shaking, stood up and staggered towards me. I instinctively covered my belly, fearing he might do something again. Seeing this, Thomas seemed hurt and began to cry, kneeling down. Elizabeth, I'm sorry. The baby must have been hurt too. I'm so sorry. Thomas broke down in tears, appearing to truly regret his actions. Behind him, Karen also muttered, Linda, I'm sorry. I said terrible things to you. Linda, hearing this, smiled and dismissed it. You should be apologizing to Elizabeth. She's been under a lot of pressure listening to my complaints. And the baby in her belly must have heard all of Grandma's words too. Karen, taken aback by Linda's words, apologized to me. Elizabeth, I'm sorry. Both seemed genuinely remorseful, and Linda and I shared a smile. However, Richard was not satisfied with their apologies. Karen and Thomas, get out. I don't want to see your faces today. He then had Karen and Thomas leave the room. After they left awkwardly, a relative spoke up. Come on, Elizabeth and Linda, let's eat together. Yes, let's eat. Yes. And so, surrounded by everyone, Linda and I enjoyed a pleasant meal. For the first time visiting my husband's family home, I spent an enjoyable evening. Richard's anger didn't subside for a while, and Thomas was eventually banned from the house. His dream of becoming the president vanished, and though he remained at the company, there was no sign of advancement from his position as a regular employee. Perhaps because of this, Thomas no longer talked incessantly about the company. When I, unable to forgive him for kicking my stomach, suggested divorce, he offered a deep apology and promised never to drink alcohol again. I proposed a separation, but Thomas, with nowhere else to go, ended up staying at the company, managing with delivery meals and showering at a gym. This lifestyle seemed to take its toll, as Thomas lost a considerable amount of weight within a month. However, he continued to work daily and kept in touch with me. Do you need anything? How's your health? Gradually, I began to open up to Thomas again. Feeling pity for him, I told him he could return home, and upon his return, Thomas apologized once more. He seemed like a changed person, not only refraining from complaining about housework, but also taking the initiative to do it. You rest, Elizabeth. Now, with my growing belly, he even takes care of the more strenuous cleaning tasks for me. Richard, seeing this change, has allowed Thomas to visit the family home again when he has time. Karen has also become much quieter, no longer speaking ill of Linda. I want to work hard for my family now, rather than just for the company. Thomas now often expresses such sentiments. Although I can never fully forgive him for kicking my stomach, I believe people can change. With the current Thomas, I feel confident we can happily welcome our baby.